Gary Rowett's first or second debut um, fixture, and probably the most important of his life. Um, Certainly, it's the most important of Birmingham City's life for the last few years. Um, Now, this time last year, when there was an international break, I did a little thing about what football was like in the 60s. Well, I did intend, and I still do intend to do a follow up to that and what football was like in the 70s. Um, and that was to fill in the fact that Blues weren't doing anything. But how wrong could I be? Uh, First of all, we have the introduction of Gary Rowett and Robbo, which has really cheered up a lot of Blues fans. And of course, the biggest announcement of all, we've bought the Wheels area in uh, in in Bordesley, ready to build a brand new stadium. Now, I'm sure you've all heard this news and are as thrilled as I am. Some people have already asked me, are you going to be sad leaving St Andrews? Well, personally, no. Um, if you'd have asked me 20 years ago, I might have said yes, but certainly the last 10 years, the place has felt a bit and has had to be rebuilding. And big ups for our owners for doing that. Uh, the football in the last 10 years have been mediocre to say the least. One or two highlights, um, but the ground doesn't play a part in that anymore. Um, it's just a place where we play, and I've said before, I still sit in a stand that's older than I am. Uh, I still go and have a pee in a dungeon, and the catering service in that main stand is pretty shocking, to be honest. So I'm not going to miss any of that. Um, as you know, I travel 200 miles to get to the ground every day, and the idea of getting to coming out of the station and being transported to the ground within 10 or 15 minutes is wonderfully appealing to me. At the moment, I have to wander through the devastation that the new railway station is. But instead of that, I will be in that railway station probably, and within a 5 minute walk or a 2 minute bus ride. It's mind boggling for me, and it will be not only will be great for Birmingham City, but be great for the town. Um, you know, we will be holding international events there, football, cricket, maybe. We might even get a rugby league final. That would be even brilliant. Uh, all these things they're so exciting, and I'm sure the guys on the Tilton Talk Show on Wednesday will be thrilled and be full of it. So we'll leave that to then. Now, to go back, as I said, my intention was to talk about football in the 70s. I'm sure there's a few more people listening than there was last year about the 60s. I know a lot of my Tilton talk mates started there watching sometime during the 70s. And of course, uh, as far as most Birmingham City fans are concerned, it was um, it was the years that Trevor Francis played for us, and um, they were thrilling. They were exciting. He made it, and it wasn't as though he was our only good player, because we had plenty of top class players during that period. The likes of Kenny Burns, Bob Latchford, Bob Hatton, Malcolm Page, Howard Kendall, um, were household names, and uh, were much sought after. Could have got into any first division side during that period. Now, 70 started off with the introduction of a new manager. Uh, uh, yes, we only used to have one every 6 years, not six every season. In those days, the great Stan Cullis had come over from Wolves uh, in about 66, 67, and he managed to get us in the top four virtually every season until he tailed off towards the end, and we started struggling in the bottom half. But we were um, we were a division above that other lot who'd slipped into the third. Those were great days. Um, we did get to a semi-final against the Baggers, Villa Park, where we absolutely battered them and lost 2-0. Um, but not only did we have a good team and we got promoted, and we all know the stories about playing at Orient and the Millwall supporters trying to blow the place up and all that business. But generally speaking, uh, football in the 70s did start to change. Um, the thoughts, as I said previously, the thoughts of going to a football match and worrying about whether you could get a drink or a cup of tea or anything, uh, we never even thought of. But the 70s, it started to change. People, there were facilities to get certainly food and drink. Whether we could get beer or not, you certainly probably could in the main stand where I sit now, um, where the seating areas was. But on the terraces, no, if you wanted to drink, it was the same as the 60s. You stayed in the Royal George till 10 to 3 and partying at the last minute. Um, the football itself, of course, one sub. You put your team out, and basically that was it. If it didn't work, it didn't work. And subs were only used to start with for injured players. Uh, but by the 70s, it was, there were so many people pretending to be injured to be subbed that it became farcical. And uh, we removed that, and basically a team could substitute a player at any time he felt like it. Um, we we're still paying 1970. You could have a season ticket for £5. We're probably paying 5 shilling for an adult to get in, and 2 and 6 for a child. The crowds certainly, people will tell you that we had 50,000 there every week. Well, we didn't. Certainly in the early 70s, um, we had people like Phil Summerhill. We still had Malcolm Page. I mean, Malcolm Page has seemed to me to play for the Blues for as long as I can remember. It isn't quite that long, but um, he was a big part of our team when we started. Um, Centre forward was when Bob Latchford had just started to come through. We still got the likes of Johnny Vincent and Trevor Hockey. But Freddie Goodwin came, and he did okay. He didn't do as well as Stan Cullis had done at the start, but um, we started to get one or two decent players together, and the club. I mean, it wasn't packed to the rafters by any means, uh, but then the following season it started to dip, and there was questions asked about Fred's influence on the team. I remember a friend of mine's, after we got knocked out of the FA Cup by Huddersfield after getting a draw at Huddersfield, and the likes of Frank Worthington were playing for Huddersfield, and they beat us 2-0 in the replay. And a friend of mine standing next to him, well, this guy ain't done much for us. But then something very strange happened. Um, Trevor Francis had played. I mean, he was only 16, and he played in the before Christmas, and uh, had uh, had made an impression. Obviously he was something different, but he wasn't a regular in the side by any means. There was a lad called Keith Bowker who played alongside Latchford, who vied for his place and kept him out for a while. And then suddenly, when we got down, in the bottom half of the table and looking like we were dropping like a stone, Gates had dropped to anything between 12 and 16,000. And then basically they threw Trevor in and thought, we might as well give this kid uh, a chance because nobody else is doing anything. And of course, he went berserk. He virtually scored in every game for about 6 weeks. And the famous the famous 4 goals against Bolton, I actually didn't see that. I got to be honest. I was still playing then, and I was elsewhere. But there was no film of the game, no nothing. But of course, it was a sensation. Um, I did. And on the following Tuesday night, uh, they played Swindon away, and I went from wherever I was working. I can't remember, in a little sports car, and I drove all the way to Swindon, parked near that ridiculous roundabout. Who people will know if they've ever been to Swindon, and ran into the ground, and I just went in the first turnstile that came to me. I didn't bother to look for my fellow blue noses at all. I just piled in, and that game ended in. That was really the first time I'd seen Francis in the flesh uh, since I saw him as a schoolboy playing in our youth team up at Damson Lane, and he was up against Dave Mackay. Dave Mackay was player manager of Swindon then, and Trevor skinned him, and Dave Mackay, who was later to become our manager, kicked him so hard and so high. I mean, he probably lost. He needed oxygen by the time he come down. But we drew that game 1-1. I remember. I think Latchford got the goal, and Trevor. You just saw this guy was so quick, and he did. You know, people people talk about the Cruyff turn. That was a Trevor Francis. Trevor Francis invented that. He invented loads of things. He'd trick people, and sometimes you'd quite simply just push the ball past them and run. And he was so quick, people were left for dead. So suddenly, from being nowhere, we win game after game after game, and I remember so well. Um, we got towards Easter, and we had to play Luton. Malcolm McDonald was playing for Luton, and we hadn't lost for about 14 games, and this would have put us. Were we in playoff time then? No, but it would certainly put us within striking distance of the top two. We need another 3 points, and I think Luton were up there with us. That's why it was so important. And we got beat. We got beat 3-2, and I certainly McDonald scored a couple. He may have got all three. I can't remember. And Francis, uh, that Luton ground. I mean, it's never been any good. It still isn't, but it was even worse in those days. Um, Opposite where the players came out, there was a shed. There was no more than that, a shed at the length of the pitch where we stood. And I remember the thing I remember most is at the kickabout, none of warm ups in them days. Uh, Trevor sort of was 20 yards away from where I was standing, and I looked at him, and this was a 16-year-old kid, and he had thighs like an all-in wrestler. He was so muscle bound in the lower half, but he was still very slim. So he managed to maintain his speed always. Uh, as he grew older, his body was uh, more equal, and he got quicker and quicker and quicker. Um, so we lost that game, and then we went to Oxford on Easter Monday, I think, and we got beat 1-0 there. And that sort of put an end to our hopes of promotion. but we obviously started the following season full of high hopes. And the first thing Freddie Goodwin did was a master stroke. It was a master stroke. He signed Bob Hatton. Now, Bob Hatton was a leading scorer in that second division for 2 or 3 seasons. He was the most regular goal scorer in the division, and we signed him from Carlisle. And from that moment on, the holy trinity of Francis, Latchford, and Hatton was started, and we scored goals for fun. Absolutely wonderful. And we signed Stan Harlan from Swindon um, to go alongside Roger Hind, who'd been with us a couple of years then. Uh, and so that was the solid centre of our defence. Now, everybody remembers that season differently, but I've looked up the records, and we were hovering around fifth or sixth position, and we couldn't. We won nearly every home game. Certainly didn't lose any home games because I think we went something like 30 odd home games without defeat, but we couldn't win away. We got some good draws and whatever, and we lost. We only lost two in that first half of the season. One at Norwich, who were vying for promotion with us. One at Millwall, who were also vying for uh, promotion, and the rest we drew. But we managed to beat Watford just before Christmas. Watford were near the bottom of the table. We beat them 1-0, and the sort of that that released the pressure, if you like. And from then on, um, I remember I well, I stopped playing. I couldn't stay away from the Blues. I just got to go. And basically, I watched every game, home and away, till the end of the season. And the first one was Charlton away, and we drew 1-1, and we didn't lose another game until the end. We didn't lose another game till the start of the following season, and we we got to the semi final of the cup, um, and we lost to Leeds, but then we went on and won promotion with Bob Latchford's famous goal at Orient on a Tuesday night, with 30,000 in that poxy little ground. I mean, it's quite nice now, to be fair to solid Orient fans, but in those days it was a dump. Um, and we won 1-0, and we were up. Now then, we're now a first division side, and for me, I was in my 20s then, and the last time uh, Blues were in the first division was 65, something like that, when I was 14 or 15, uh, and it was such a relief to get back into that. Birmingham City were a first division regular side, and they got from the moment they got promoted in '55. Uh, they'd done remarkably well, but eventually the '60s we tailed off. So there we were in 1972, um, and we were the business. Now, we were all there on the first day, and against Sheffield United, and we scored first, and the place is rocking, and we lost 2-1 because Trevor Rocky, our old player, scored a fluky. He had a toe poke from about 25 yards, which flew in the top corner of the net uh, to score the winning goal. And he was a hero at Birmingham, but they never forgive him for that. But on the Tuesday night afterwards, we had another home game. This time against Newcastle. Again, our friend Malcolm McDonald was there. He got a couple of goals, but we skinned them 3-2. And again, it was we'd arrived. It was absolutely wonderful. Now, the reason we didn't we had this formidable home record. We went for over 30 odd games without losing, and then having lost the first one of the season, um, but we still we took on the best at home and did okay, but we just couldn't win away until uh, again about November time. We went to the old Victoria Ground at Stoke, then with Jimmy Greenough and Jeff Hurst and Alan, um, the Chelsea bloke, you know what I mean. And we won there. We won there. We won, it was a wonderful relief to win an away game, and from that moment on, we were comfortable away from home. We weren't pulling up any trees, but then we had springtime um, turn of form, and we won 5 or 6 on the trot, and unbeaten till the end of the season, and we finished up 10th, um, and not one of our gates at home had fallen below 30,000. Every single time we drew 30,000 or more, 50 odd thousand for Man United, 50 odd thousand for the Villa, and so on. But when we were playing the likes of Ipswich and Fulham and other sides of lesser repute, still we had 30,000 plus on a regular basis, and so that was maintained the following year, um, and we struggled. We struggled from time to time, but we always came good in the end. Now, what else happened in the 70s? First of all, England never qualified for the World Cup. We worry about that now. We didn't worry about it then. Um, we we all thought, well, if certainly in '74, everybody's saying, well, if you'd have picked Trevor Francis to play against Poland instead of Kevin Hector and Alan Clark or whatever, we'd have won that game, or we would have gone to Germany. And ironically, he got injured. It was during the time he got injured. And by the time '78 came round and we were trying to qualify from Argentina, he's still not in the team. And it was lunacy. And we didn't qualify again. And it was a remarkable World Cup, uh, '78. It would have been wonderful if England could have been there. But the Jocks did. And they embarrassed themselves, as they always do. They drew with Kuwait. They got beat by Peru and Costa Rica. Um, but they managed somehow managed to beat Holland, and the great Archie Gemmill, who was to come to us soon after that, uh, was absolutely wonderful. Anyway, I digress. Going to the match, didn't go on the bus in those days. Used to park the car uh, down Albert Road or somewhere like that, uh, or down Cattle Road, and you'd walk 5 minutes to the ground. And so going by car was the norm then. The old buses that came out of the old bus station across the road, they started to disappear. And again, you'd come out and not only leaving early in those days like we used to with the buses, uh, but we'd be out. I'd find them sort of out the door, back to your car and away, and be no trouble. Now, small heat has been changed a lot since those days, and the car parking spaces are not as regularly available as they used to be. Um, I mean, going on to the '80s, which we shall do, you didn't have to worry about car parking spaces because nobody went. Um, but anyway, back to the '70s. Now, uh, we stuttered along after '75 and the tragic semi-final loss to Fulham, which broke my heart. It really did. This was our year. We was played so well. We got to the semi final. We were in a good position in the league, and Trevor Francis hadn't kicked a ball for 6 months for us because of his injury, and he came back ready for the semi final, and we played awful. Played awful at Hillsborough. We played very well at Main Road, battered them unremittingly for 120 minutes, and in the 121st, they fluked a goal and finished up playing West Ham in the final, which West Ham would have caused us no problems at all. So that was our year, and it all fell apart on one sad night, on a rainy night in Manchester. And after that, things were never the same. There was a feeling of, oh, this is never going to happen. And we started to lose players. We lost Latchford, and we lost one or two others, trying to balance the books and keep ourselves in the division. Well, eventually we got to 79, and basically we were tumbling. We were going out the division, and apart from beating Manchester United 5-1 in one game, Trevor was sacrificed. Jim Smith, and I don't care what anybody says about Jim Smith, whether he was a good manager or not. I never forgave him for selling Trevor, and I know it wasn't really his fault, but his name was on the contract, and he forever live in my mind as selling off the silver. That took us into the 80s basically, and the money from Trevor, we signed Frank Worthington and Archie Gemmell and Colin Todd and Don Givens and Tony Towers and all these top class first division players, and we soon got back. More of that probably next year at this time, but that was the 70s for you. Football at the beginning of the 70s was high on everybody's to-do list. People wanted to go and watch football. By the time the 80s came along, that had disappeared. If you were still a football watcher by 1980, you were considered a pariah. It was worse than being a smoker. Oh, you go to football? Oh dear. Good God, all those hooligans. Well, I'm afraid that's what the 70s will be remembered for, the hooliganism, which drove people away from it. And the 80s were puerile. But as I say, I'll talk about that another time. Thank you for watching. I will give you a report tomorrow night after the QPR game, and also on Monday at the home match with Preston. Anyway, God bless every blue nose on the planet. We've got some.